Bonjour. I was born in China. As you can see, I'm 100% made in China. Except my clothes, maybe. I'm very happy to be here in Avignon, very beautiful city. And I'd like to share with you some very interesting subject called how to motivate people to be at their best. When I was, I basically tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in China and I went to America for about 15 years. And I was in China for 26 years, American 15 years, and in France for 7 years. Oops, I just told you my age. The reason I tell you this is if I take out the 4 years when I was a baby, I basically don't know quite about the world, which is not totally true. But I spent 22 years in the West and 22 years in China and in the East. So you will soon find out why I tell you this. So how to motivate people to be at their best? Let me ask you a question. Have you had a situation where you had to motivate someone? Please raise your hand. I see lots of hands. Perhaps all of you have experienced this. And for small and for big, we all experience motivating other people. Sometimes it's motivating your own children to study hard in order to get into a good university. Or to motivate your employee to work hard to achieve the results. Or could even be a president to motivate the whole nation to be united together in order to fight against the terrorists. So, big or small, motivation is crucial in keeping people going and being at their best. And I also personally encounter a situation where I have to motivate someone. In this case, it's quite difficult because it is my own children. When my daughter was 4.5 years old, one day when she come home, she saw a very big black wooden box. Later on, she understood that's a brand new Steinway grand piano. It's a very expensive instrument considering our income, and we're not a very rich family, and it's a very important investment. Why we do that? Because we're very passionate about classical music, about piano. So we decided to acquire an expensive and the best piano in the world for my children. And so that they can learn how to play music, and so we can also enjoy that. And things didn't go as well as we planned. We were planning to sit there to have 2 Mozart at our home and to see how they are making. But unfortunately, they start to hate piano. And they start to hate it every day as they start to play. And later on, I was thinking that what's going on? I have the best piano. I hired the best teacher. I believe my children are very bright, very smart. Why? They hate to play this beautiful instrument. So then I started to really think, how could I motivate them so that they can be motivated to play piano and play well? Through this process, I have learned there are different ways to motivating people. And if I summarize, there are 2 different ways. One is a Western approach. The other one is the Eastern approach. So in the Western approach, they believe the motivation comes from individuals' passion and their talents. And in the Western philosophy, you believe that you can motivate people based on what they're interested in. If someone is interested in marketing, you let them to do the marketing work. If someone is interested in operations, you let them do the operations work. But if you let them do things they're not interested in, then they're not going to be motivated to do a good job. So after I understood this point, I started to motivate my children by telling them how beautiful the music is. So when they wake up in the morning, instead of alarm clock, they wake up with the music. And they listen to Mozart and Beethoven, Chopin. They have no escape. When they're having breakfast, they're listening to the music. And pretty soon, they realize the music is actually beautiful. I tell them why Beethoven wrote the beautiful Moonlight Sonata, why Chopin wrote the very beautiful pieces. And they started to really appreciate the music. They see the music is connecting between the people. And there's a great culture behind that as well. So they started to show great interest in music, and as a sequence, they started to play very well on that. And second, in the Western approach, it believes that people are motivated because they are good at doing certain things. So when someone is very good at dancing, they will enjoy, they will do well, they are motivated to do that. When someone is very good at painting, they will do well at painting because they're good at that. So then I started to tell myself I need to make my children good at the piano. So then I started to invite people to my home and tell them that we will have a guest, you're going to perform. So they start to practice, they perform, and the guests start to clap. And then they start to see that they're actually good. So my wife works in a university, and there is a bar in the university. So we often bring the children there. They play there, and a lot of audience start to clap to them. They became famous. They became a bar musician there. So when they feel they're good at playing piano, they naturally are motivated to do that, and they start to do really well. And third, the motivation comes from the short-term goal and milestones. If you allow certain people to achieve a milestone, to realize the result, they will feel encouraged. Maybe have a little bit challenge at the beginning, but soon they will overcome that and achieve that result, have the self-fulfillment. So that's what we did to our children as well. We started to let them go through the competition. When they win the competition, even though it's just a short-term goal, they feel motivated and they start to do well. So you can see in the Western approach, the motivation are based on self-interest, based on this individual, himself or herself. But there are also situations where a job might be boring. Maybe the task is dangerous, or you cannot see the immediate results. It may take a long time to see the results. So in this situation, the Western approach doesn't entirely work. So how can we motivate people in this kind of situation? Now let me introduce you the Eastern approach. The Eastern approach believes that the motivation is coming from the contributing to the collectivity, such as family, community, and country. So in the Eastern philosophy and Eastern culture, we believe that the individual is not the most important. Individual cannot be separated from the society where you live. So what is important is not about your individual accomplishment, is the well-being of the society as a whole. So it is very important to create the balance and harmony among the society. That's why in China, there is a high-speed train like the TGV here in France. But we don't call it TGV, we call it harmony. Why? Because the Chinese appreciate a society to be a harmonious society rather than individual-based. So with this, there are three important approaches that the Eastern philosophy takes to motivate people. So the first is people are motivated by recognizing the utility of the task and the jobs they are asked to do. If you pay attention to this, it's not about that they wanted to do, but they are asked to do. First, people are motivated by that. Let me give you an example. For instance, John Stephen Akwari. He's an athlete from Tanzania, and he was running the marathon in the 1968 Olympic game in Mexico. When he is at 19-kilometer point, and he's fall down and he break his knees and causing the dislocation of the knees, and also hurt very badly on the shoulder here. So it's very painful. If you have ever experienced the dislocation of your knees, it's very painful. The doctor will tell you immediately you should stop and relax. But that's not what John did. He continued for the rest 23 kilometers. And you can imagine how severe the pain is, how much suffering he has as he completes that 23 kilometers of the journey. He's the last one, obviously, to finish the race. But what motivated him? He could just stop. Nobody would blame him. Everybody would understand. What motivated him to continue this journey that is not interesting, that is not everyone's competency, and why he do that? So this is what he said. He said, my country did not send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me 5,000 miles to finish the race. Let's understand this phrase here. He said, my country. He didn't say himself. He's emphasizing on his country's glory. And he wanted to bring the glory to his country rather than himself, rather than his personal gain. So his motivation is not based on self-interest, but based on the utility of the country. Second, people are motivated by the very experience of hardship and self-denial. Many people here perhaps think that, what can you motivate people with this kind of hardship? Now, I wanted to share with you, given the strong belief in the association between the self-discipline and social harmony, the Oriental culture actually sees the endurance of hardship and the self-denial as an important virtue and a must-have. In this culture, we also believe the opportunity of experiencing hardship and self-denial is a strong motivator in itself. Let me give you an example of Chinese national examination. This is the chance for the high school student, lycée student to get into the universities, similar to the baccalaureate here in France. Now, in this banner, every class has put a banner to motivate their classmates. In one of the banners says that we have to endure hardship and difficult moment because study is very difficult in order for us to achieve the final results. So here the motivation is not based on the interest. It's based on the endurance and the hardship. And I often also tell my children when they are playing piano, sometimes they tell me, Dad, my hand is too little and it's a little bit painful and it's hard. I've been sitting here so boring. So I tell them that you need to learn how to eat bitterness. And I tell them that one never become great without suffering. We can see throughout the history, if one can only comfortably sit at home, do what they are like to do, they can never achieve something great. So I encourage them with this when they have the difficult moment. The third, people are motivated by long-term goal and progression toward that goal. Kung Fu perhaps is a typical example. The Kung Fu master would not tell their disciples to have the short-term gain, but rather to instill in the student the long-term goal of reaching the highest realm. Nelson Mandela is a typical example. He was in jail for 27 years in his life. I see some of you here are not even 27 years old. If you can imagine, for all those years of your youth, you are in jail. How could you be motivated? He was in jail for that long time. The only thing motivating him is not short-term, because short-term is awful. He's suffering. He suffered from humiliation, and he suffered from the pain, mental pain. He also suffered from loneliness. So where is the motivation? The motivation is long-term for him, because he want his country to take away the discrimination against the black people, and he also want to introduce democracy to his country. He succeeded after 27 years in the jail. I concluded by telling you a good story. After I used different way, the West and East approach to motivate my children, I succeeded because these two young children sitting among you has done exceptionally well. They have won 5 consecutive years in Steinway piano competition in Paris. They were invited to play in the Carnegie Hall in New York City. And they will also have a personal recital, be invited to Annecy Music Festival this year. So I don't know what my daughter is doing with the leg, putting up. Apparently she's enjoying with the piano. So apparently I've done a good job to motivating them. I always tell them, you should always use the piano as a way to develop your character, to look for long term. So my daughter now is talking about having a concert, host a concert where she will play piano and to do a fundraising event and then to encourage underprivileged kids to learn how to play piano. I hope you will support her. So West and Eastern approach are different, but are complementary. Let me summarize in the conclusion. So even Michelle Obama and her daughter's case, Michelle told her daughter when they're choosing the sports that you can choose one that you're interested, but also allow me to choose one for you. What she's saying is that you should choose something based on your interest, but also something based on responsibility. So we see people are using that in the Western country. In the Huawei case, it's the most innovative company in China. They have developed more patents in the world than any other company. And they train their employee based on both military training, whereas hardship, endurance, but also Western approach of innovation focused. So finally, I'd like to use a quote here from the very famous poet, Kipling. And he once said, "Oh, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet." Now, 100 years has passed since he said that. Now, I think in the present society, the East need to meet the West. And the world has changed, that we need to embrace each other. So I'd like to change this poem into this. "Our East is East and West is West, and the twain shall meet." Thank you very much.